Good afternoon, friends. Welcome and happy Earth Day to everyone. My name's Katie. I'm joining you from the Dangerous Lagoon at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. And I'm very excited to introduce a new series that we're starting today called Conservation Conversations. It's a bit of a tongue twister. And we're kicking it off today on Earth Day, talking about plastic pollution and trash in our waterways. So I'm hope that you will be able to join us over the coming weeks for more of these conversations with scientists, researchers, and community partners. But yeah, excited to kick it off today for the very first one with my friend Cassy Sherlock. So Cassy is a recent graduate of U of T, where she earned her honors Bachelor of Science in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. During her time at U of T, Cassy was a research assistant in microplastic in Chelsea Rockman's lab, and where she spent 2 years investigating the presence and effects of microplastics in different aquatic systems and organisms. Now she's working with the U of T trash team as community outreach and research specialist, increasing waste literacy in the community while reducing plastics in our ecosystems. Welcome, Cassy. We're so happy to have you. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. So let's start. Let's dive right in. Tell us about your work. What do you do?
For sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the community outreach and research specialist for the U of T trash team. So my primary role is to focus on our solutions-based research program. So I tend to work on the scientific projects, like investigating innovative solutions to help solve our plastic pollution problem, and researching the potential sources of litter, where it accumulates and how it travels, and what types of plastic we're finding the most in the Toronto Harbor.
Interesting. Toronto Harbor, eh? What kind of stuff are you doing in Toronto Harbor?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the big project that we've had a lot of stuff going on this past year and the last summer. So I work really closely with our Seabin project. So the Seabin is a type of trash capture device. And we are partnered with Ports Toronto, who've installed Seabins in their marina at the Outer Harbour Marina down east, and along the waterfront. So Seabins are like a floating trash can. They go into a lake or any body of water, and they're powered by a pump. So this pump is at the bottom, and it acts as a vacuum. So it allows water to be sucked in. And so it's constantly pulling that water in. And then inside of it, there's a mesh bag, and it's removable. And that's where all of the debris that it collects is pulled into. So then you can easily remove that mesh bag as you would like a garbage bag. And then you can empty it out into the garbage and put any recyclables that you find in the recycling, and then put it back in. And then it can continue to clean up the lake that way. So we kind of act as the scientific partner in this project with Ports Toronto, where we look into the debris that we find in the Seabins, and we quantify and characterize the types of plastic that we find in order to help find the potential sources of litter that are within the harbor.
What kind of stuff have you been finding?
Yeah, so I'll quickly revise our call on some things from our top 10. So we've been finding a lot of categories of microplastics. So for those of you who don't know, microplastics are plastics that are smaller than 5 millimeters. And they often occur when bigger pieces of plastic have broken down because of the sun or wave action, or just from the harsh environment. So we've been finding things like hard fragments and pieces of film. Film can come from things like cling wrap or a lot of food wrappers, things like that. And also we've been finding a lot of just big food wrappers, plastic bottles, straws, typical things like that. So that kind of talks about how those sources are coming from consumers like you and I. So when we purchase something like a Tim Hortons cup, that's kind of coming from us. Whereas when we found things like pellets, or some people call them nurdles, these are primary microplastics. So that means that they're produced in this shape and form on purpose. And they're these little things about this size. They're about 2 millimeters often. And that's the building blocks of plastic. So they have a bunch of these pellets, and then they mold them into a water bottle or whatever plastic container that there is. So we've been finding, I think over the 19 weeks that we had the 3 seabins, we found over 11,000 of these pellets. So in terms of the sources there, yeah, which was surprising and not surprising. Unfortunately, we have a lot of plastic industries along Lake Ontario. And so when we find things like that, we can identify and say, okay, they're not coming from people like you and I. So what can we do to inform solutions or inform policy to help stop this spillage and leakage of those pellets into our lake?
Interesting. What are some of the, other than nurdles, like what were the other top items that you were finding? Oh, you said films, I guess, which is like small pieces of wrappers and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So those are hard. It's like when you, when you're unwrapping something that's wrapped in that really thin, clear plastic, if you're cutting it and then it ends up in a bunch of little pieces, that's pretty tough. So it can just fly away. And we're also finding some construction foam. And as we know, Toronto's under a lot of construction constantly. So things like that tend to just end up in our lake too. And a lot of single-use plastics. And what's really great is obviously Canada announced a single-use plastic bans on 6 plastics. So based on the information and data that we collect from the seabins, we hope to better inform policy like that in the future and add to that list. And just for those of you who don't know, that ban was actually compiled from data from the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. So that's from people doing community cleanups when you go out with your family or your friends when times are a little safer, and you can just pick up plastic and input the data on a data card and then give it to them. So it's really great that way.
Absolutely, super easy. Whenever we do, the aquarium organizes our shoreline cleanups, we always report our data to Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup so that we can be contributing to that bigger database of information to know. Yeah, and then, I mean, we usually do a local beach, and the cigarette butts is always the #1 item that we find for sure. But nurdles, so much more in the last couple of years, have been really showing up in what we've collected, and they're tough to pick up as someone collecting trash because they're so tiny and hard to see. So I'd imagine the sea bins do a better job of sort of separating them out, that's great.
Yeah, and they do. That's a good point. And the sea bin itself, this inner bag I was talking about, it has a mesh that's about 2 millimeters in size. So it's pretty perfect for those pellets and nurdles, but some of them can be a little smaller. And something interesting we found with these sea bins is that a lot of the aquatic plant life and macrophytes that are around Lake Ontario are actually acting as a mop or a natural mechanism of collecting the smaller plastics, including microplastics, which was very cool and something we're planning to investigate this summer and see whether there can be something there as well as a solution.
Any really weird or unusual things that the sea bins have collected so far?
Oh, the weirdest thing. I think it was a flip-flop or something. Maybe not too unusual. Actually, if I lost my shoe, I think I would know. But because they were situated in the marina this past summer, that's probably more likely. A lot of people like to live on their boats, obviously, in the summer. It's so beautiful. And so easily, personal belongings can be easily lost. But when we did these things called the visual audit, so this is another method that we've developed in order to help identify the best places for devices like the sea bin. So it's essentially when we just walk along the docks and slips along the waterfront, and we just count and characterize the different types of litter that we found. And that way we could report back to Ports Toronto, who buy and maintain the device, and say, hey, it would actually be really great if you put a sea bin near the Toronto Music Garden. There's a lot of people there and we saw a lot of trash. So when I did that, I found a lot of weird things like a yoga mat, a high heel shoe. But I also found map turtles, which was really cool. So
fun.
Yeah.
That's a good news story.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how did you end up getting involved with this project?
Yeah, so I'll start from maybe inspiration into why I'm so passionate about the environment in general. I had the opportunity before I entered university to go to an expedition to Indonesia and work with a nonprofit called Operation Wallacea. And so they kind of showed me the insides of research and what it was like to work with professors and collect data. And I was in the jungle for a while, and then I was scuba diving twice a day in the Coral Triangle. And that was really, really fantastic. And I found my love for the ocean there. And so that kind of inspired me to go into the environment field within university as well. And then around in my second year, I found Chelsea Rockman's lab on her website. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to work with her. And so that's kind of how that followed through. And then I was able to do a thesis project with her investigating the presence of microplastics in tree swallows. And from there, she offered me a position with the U of T trash team, which I was really, really excited about. So, and obviously with my scientific background there, it overlapped, but I was really excited about the outreach aspect too that the U of T trash team obviously encompasses. So it's kind of the adventure of how I got here.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think it's really cool work that you guys are doing to help inform the city on what's happening with plastic trash and our Great Lakes in particular. For anyone watching today, what's important for them to know? Like, what if we don't fix this plastic pollution problem? What are the consequences do you think that we're looking at down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. So researchers, they've predicted that in our Great Lakes alone, 10,000 tons of plastic enters annually, which is, for those of you who can't really fathom that weight, I couldn't either. The Eiffel Tower weighs just over 9,000 tons. So that within just our freshwater systems alone is pretty crazy to think about. And then by 2030, other researchers have predicted that we could see up to 90 million metric tons of plastic in our aquatic systems worldwide if we stick to this business as usual status. So kind of how we're just we're continuously using the amount of plastic that we do. That's the state that we'll see our aquatic systems in. And so there are many studies which have shown the presence of plastic in our aquatic and terrestrial organisms like birds, fish, and everyone's seen those pictures of turtles being affected. But even the small crucial parts of our ecosystems like plants and plankton have been negatively affected by the presence of plastic. And so even despite wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plants, that clean our drinking water, we're finding plastics there as well. So that's a little bit scary as well. So this is really a problem that can only be solved with everybody's help and through education and just kind of reading articles and obviously events like this where we can kind of learn about what are some solutions. So,
and I think there's like implications that we don't even know about yet in terms of human health, right? Like how much plastic is absolutely everywhere. They found it in every ecosystem on Earth, from the high Arctic to the deep ocean, and more building up in our own bodies as well.
For sure. And that's something the Rockman Lab is very much starting to go into, I think, in terms of that research. It is unknown, the effects on humans, but we maybe don't even need those studies. We should really just look at how they're affecting other organisms in our ecosystems as well, and focus on that as probably being the worst thing that could happen at this point. And as you mentioned, the Arctic is obviously a sink for microplastics too, and we're seeing how climate change in tandem with that is affecting those fragile ecosystems over there too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people are generally pretty knowledgeable about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the problem with plastic in the ocean, but also that like this is happening in our local systems too. It's not just a out there in the ocean problem. It's for us at the aquarium, it's right down the street. Toronto Harbor's right there in Lake Ontario. So
exactly. And it's often that those get really big press, which is great. And then you can kind of think about, hey, what's happening at home? And obviously you and I can't personally help the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but we can start at home and maybe stop using and buying coffee cups when you go to Tim Hortons and get something reusable, or bring reusable cutlery when you're going to have lunch. And there are many solutions that way too to help starting with the individual.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some additional challenges right now, but also some advantages to everyone being at home. So although it breaks my heart that I can't take my reusable cup to Starbucks or Tim Hortons right now, at least if people are getting takeout delivered to home, you really don't need that plastic cutlery because you've got a metal fork and knife right in your kitchen ready to use. So hopefully those things will trade themselves off. And as we make our way out of this pandemic, we'll go back to reusing our reusable mugs every day as much as we can.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. And obviously with COVID, there are some setbacks. So maybe the coffee cup wasn't a great example for for 2021, but in future, for those who go to work every day, when we're able to continue that lifestyle, it's a great unfortunately, when I was in university, that was like the coffee, they had a separate section for paper cups because obviously students are constantly drinking coffee, but it was always overflowing. And I thought, they even give you a little discount. I think it's 10 cents. So it's a good initiative and it's easy, right? So for sure. And when you're Uber Eatsing, they have the option to not ask for utensils. So it's really great to always make sure that you have that off so you're not getting a plastic fork when you have your reusable fork at home.
For sure. Okay, so for everybody watching today, if they want to help out, what can they do other than reducing their single-use plastics? What else can I do to help you out with your project?
For sure, yeah. So you can actually check out our website at rockmanlab.com/trash team, and we have some great resources there. And you can find out more about some upcoming projects this summer as well to help understand the potential sources of plastic and other events that we do in order to help the community learn more about waste literacy. An example is our home waste audit. We've done a couple, and essentially we try and engage individuals to go through their trash weekly and kind of identify what they're using. And so this helps you realize how much you're really throwing in the garbage and how much you are recycling. And so kind of once you have to physically do that and go through your trash, you're like, wow, like what items am I constantly using instead of buying or getting carrots in a plastic bag? Can I find the ones that are just not wrapped in plastic? Or whatever solution you can find that fits into your lifestyle better. Obviously, everybody is on their own journey in terms of going towards a zero waste lifestyle. It's very, very hard to have that zero waste entirely lifestyle because, as we know, you go anywhere and there's plastic all around us. But it's about, again, making those small individual changes that you can find and starting off small. Something like not using that plastic bag in the grocery store when you grab your vegetables, instead buying a cotton bag or something like that. Anything that you can find that might make a little behavioral change. And then from there, maybe a couple months later, you've got that sorted. You can then try something new. So we like to encourage those types of changes as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's getting easier and easier to make those changes. There's so many more products now that you don't have to necessarily go to a specialty store to get them, especially now that we're all getting everything curbside pickup or delivered. You can shop around a bit. Like I've tried to switch to using like shampoo and stuff that comes in a bar instead of in a bottle, and it works great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And sometimes that doesn't work for everybody. I know a couple of my friends have tried that and they're like, oh, it doesn't work for me. And I'm like, okay, how about you try buying silicone Q-tips instead of buying the ones that are cotton and plastic. And, you use like 2 of those a day, some people. So it's making, an initiative and an effort to find those ones that really fit you. So
yeah, for sure. And things like, like bamboo toothbrushes and cleaning products that are better for the environment. Like there's so many options. And yeah, I love your idea of like, to start small, pick something, make one change, and then gradually add to that over time.
Exactly.
Okay, and like if we are going for a walk along Toronto Harbor and we see one of the sea bins, is there anything that we should do or not do if we encounter one of your trash capture devices?
Yeah, for sure. You can please take a photo, and if you're comfortable, share with us on Twitter. Make sure to tag us. Don't touch it. It's constantly it uses electricity, so in order for people to empty it, it's going to be obviously designated staff. But feel free to look at it, and we should have some signs indicating what the project is again. And you can share with your friends and family about these devices. And if those of you who are listening are interested in starting your own trash trapping project similar to what we're doing, feel free to look at our site. We have some great resources there on how groups can start their own project like that. And it doesn't have to be a technical or technology like the sea bin. There are other DIY devices that you can do. And so we try and share that on our website as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And don't touch the sea bins because you need to count what's in there. They don't want to mess up your data.
Please. We want to go through the garbage.
As wonderful a job as I'm sure that is.
I
can only imagine how good it smells when you pull it out of the lake. But.
And if you see us characterizing, please come by and say hello. We're always happy to chat. And you can tell us about how you're helping reduce plastic, or if you want to know more, we are happy to give you some tips.
Amazing. I love that. Awesome. Okay, well, I think that's all my questions for you. Is there anything that you didn't get a chance to tell us that you want to pass along to everyone watching?
Yeah, this conversation has been so positive, and I'm so glad about that. I want to say our plastics problem is a big one, but with everyone chipping in a little bit collectively, it becomes a big difference that you're making. And so I hope today that the people can feel inspired and try one of our tips on our website. And any tip you see going around on social media, you can try that as well. That will help reduce your plastic waste. And if you're up to it, please take a picture of you and tag us, so we can cheer you on whatever change you're making.
And this is the perfect day to do it, right? Earth Day.
Yes, exactly.
Pick something, make that pledge, and try and see it through for the year in terms of keeping our planet healthy. It's the only planet we've got, so we got to look after it.
100%.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cassy. It was such a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm keen to go and see if I can spot one of these sea bins in the wild for myself. So I'll check it out on Toronto Harbor one of these days.
All right. Thanks so much, Katie.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to continue this conservation conversation series through the month of May, so watch out for more. We've got scientists and researchers talking about different topics, and excited to have everyone join us. Thanks so much, and have a happy Earth Day, and we'll talk to you soon.